My name is Minnie. I'm 58 years old and the proud mother of two daughters. My youngest, Audrey, and I shared a special bond since she was little. At least I thought we did. That's why being banned from her wedding crushed my soul completely. When I saw my photo at the security gate with that sign, "Do not let her in," I simply turned and walked away in silence. 4 hours later, she discovered what happened. Her perfect wedding day ended right there. If you're watching this video, where are you from? Hit like and subscribe to follow my journey of heartbreak, betrayal, and unexpected redemption. I grew up in a quiet little town in Montana, surrounded by mountains and wide open spaces. Life was simple but good. My parents raised me to value honesty, hard work, and family above all else. Those values stayed with me through college at Montana State, where I studied elementary education and met James during my sophomore year. James was charming, ambitious, and utterly determined to become a successful attorney. We fell in love quickly, perhaps too quickly. Looking back, the warning signs were there. But when you're 22 and head over heels, you tend to see what you want to see. We married right after graduation, and I was certain we'd build a beautiful life together. The early years were happy. James got into a good law school, and I supported us by teaching at a local elementary school. We lived in a tiny apartment, ate ramen noodles more often than not, and dreamed about our future. When James landed a position at a prestigious corporate law firm, we felt like we'd finally arrived. We bought our first house, a lovely colonial with a white picket fence in a good neighborhood, and decided it was time to start our family. Sophia came first. She was a serious, thoughtful baby who grew into a serious, thoughtful child. From the beginning, she and James had a special connection. They shared the same analytical mind, the same drive for perfection. 3 years later, Audrey arrived, a burst of sunshine and creativity from day one. While Sophia took after her father, Audrey was more like me, artistic, emotional, and sensitive. My bond with Audrey formed naturally. We shared a love of art, music, and literature. On weekends, we'd visit museums together or curl up with books, while James took Sophia to debate competitions or tennis lessons. It wasn't that James didn't love Audrey or I didn't love Sophia. We adored both our daughters equally. It's just that these natural affinity groups formed within our family. As the years passed, James's career demanded more and more of his time. 80-hour work weeks became normal, and when he was home, he was often distracted or exhausted. I continued teaching at Westbrook Elementary, finding fulfillment in my classroom while still being able to be present for our daughters. Principal Thompson was wonderfully accommodating, allowing me a schedule that let me be home when the girls returned from school. Despite James's increasingly demanding job, we managed to create beautiful family memories. Summer vacations to the coast, Thanksgiving dinners with extended family Christmas morning traditions. Our photo albums were filled with smiling faces and special moments. I worked hard to maintain these traditions, believing they were the glue that held us together. It was during Audrey's teenage years that I first noticed serious cracks in our marriage. James had become senior partner at his firm, bringing home an impressive salary, but rarely sharing any actual time with us. More concerning was how controlling he became about money. Despite our comfortable income, he questioned every purchase I made, requiring justifications for even basic expenses. "You spent $130 at the grocery store. What are you buying? Gold-plated cereal," he'd say, even though I was simply purchasing normal groceries for a family of 4. "Audrey doesn't need art supplies that expensive. She's just dabbling," he'd declare, dismissing her passion as a passing phase. I noticed concerning patterns in his behavior, but I convinced myself that all marriages have rough patches. The girls seemed happy and well-adjusted. Sophia was excelling academically, already setting her sights on following her father into law. Audrey was blossoming as an artist, her work being selected for display in school and local exhibitions. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect American family, but behind closed doors, the tension was building and I was walking on eggshells more and more frequently. I told myself I was keeping the family together by not rocking the boat. Now, I wonder if my silence only taught my daughters that a woman should tolerate disrespect from her partner. That's a guilt I still carry. What example did I set for them during those years? But hindsight offers clarity we rarely have in the moment. And at the time, I truly believed I was doing what was best for everyone. I had no idea how dramatically our lives were about to change, or that the family I'd worked so hard to nurture was built on a foundation that was already crumbling beneath us. Sometimes the structures we believe are most solid are actually the most fragile, a lesson I would soon learn in the most painful way possible. The day I discovered James's affair remains burned into my memory. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I was grading papers at the dining room table when James's cell phone, left behind in his morning rush, chimed with a text message. I wouldn't normally have looked, but the phone kept chiming repeatedly. Thinking it might be an emergency, I glanced at the screen. The messages were from his legal assistant, Natalie. "Last night was amazing," followed by details I won't repeat, and suggestions for their next encounter. My hands trembled as I unlocked his phone. I knew his password, of course, and found hundreds of messages stretching back months. When James came home that evening, I was sitting in the living room, the printed text messages on the coffee table between us. His face went from confusion to anger in seconds. "You went through my phone. That's a violation of my privacy," he said immediately, on the offensive. "Don't you dare make this about me," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "How long has this been going on, James?" He didn't deny it. Instead, he shrugged as if we were discussing something trivial. "These things happen, Minnie. You've been distant. You're always focused on the girls or your students. A man has needs." The coldness in his voice shocked me more than the affair itself. There was no remorse, no shame, just irritation at being caught. That's when I realized the man I'd married had disappeared long ago, if he'd ever truly been there at all. "I want a divorce," I said quietly. His laugh was dismissive. "Don't be dramatic. Where would you go? What would you do? You've been a housewife for 23 years. I'm a teacher, James. I've worked our entire marriage," I reminded him. "On a teacher's salary, good luck." He snorted. "Think of the girls. Think of our reputation." But I was done thinking about everyone except myself. For once, I needed to stand up for my own worth. The next day, I consulted a divorce attorney. She warned me that the process would be difficult given James's legal connections and resources, but I was determined. When I told the girls about our separation, their reactions broke my heart in different ways. Sophia, then 26, and already working at a prestigious law firm herself, was coldly practical. "You're making a mistake, Mum. Dad's explained what happened. You're overreacting." Audrey, 22, and just graduated from college, hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry, Mum. Are you okay? What can I do?" The divorce proceedings were even worse than my attorney had warned. James used every legal maneuver to hide assets, minimize support, and drag out the process. He claimed my teacher's pension should be considered in the settlement, while arguing his own substantial retirement accounts were off limits. He insisted the house was purchased primarily with his inheritance money, though that wasn't true. After 15 months of brutal legal battles, I lost the family home and received a settlement far smaller than what was fair. James had simply outgunned my lawyer with his firm's resources. I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town, having to start over at 55 years old. The financial struggles were difficult, but the emotional toll was worse. I sank into depression, questioning every decision I'd made over the past 2 decades. My doctor prescribed antidepressants, and I started seeing Dr. Reynolds, a therapist who specialized in late-life divorce. "You're experiencing complicated grief," Dr. Reynolds explained. "You're mourning not just the end of your marriage, but the loss of your identity as a wife, the loss of your home, and the loss of the future you imagined." Slowly, with therapy and the support of friends like Carol, my colleague at Westbrook Elementary, I began to rebuild. I focused on creating a cozy home in my small apartment, reconnected with old friends James had subtly pushed away, and rediscovered interests I'd set aside during my marriage. Throughout this difficult time, Audrey's support meant everything. She visited regularly, called daily, and even helped me decorate my new place. She was the lifeline that kept me going during those darkest days. I had no idea that this precious connection was already being targeted for destruction. After the divorce, James launched what I now recognize as a deliberate campaign to turn both daughters against me. It began subtly with comments designed to rewrite our family history. "Your mother was always unhappy, always complaining," he'd tell them. "Nothing I did was ever enough. She refused counseling when I suggested it." He claimed, though, it was actually I who had begged him to try marriage therapy. "She's unstable, girls. We need to be patient with her," he'd say, planting seeds of doubt about my mental health. Sophia fully embraced her father's narrative. She'd always idolized James, and now, working alongside him in the same legal field, strengthened their bond. Her calls and visits became less frequent, and when we did speak, she was formal and distant. Audrey initially maintained relationships with both of us, trying to stay neutral in what she called grown-up problems. She'd visit me during the week and have dinner with her father on weekends. She called both of us regularly and refused to take sides. I respected her approach and never spoke negatively about James in her presence, despite how he had treated me. The contrast in our post-divorce lives couldn't have been more stark. While I pinched pennies in my modest apartment, James purchased a luxurious penthouse downtown. He bought a new sports car and began traveling extensively with Natalie, whom he married less than a year after our divorce was finalized. More significantly, he used his financial resources to maintain influence over our daughters. He paid off Sophia's student loans entirely. He funded Audrey's art studio setup. He took both girls on lavish international vacations, Paris, Tokyo, Sydney, posting their adventures all over social media. "It's just money, Mum," Audrey assured me when I expressed concern about these expensive gifts. "It doesn't change how I feel about either of you." But I noticed subtle shifts in Audrey's behaviour. Cancelled plans became more frequent. Her calls grew shorter. She began questioning memories of our family life. "Dad says you chose to miss my 5th-grade art show because you were upset with him," she mentioned once. "Audrey, I would never miss your art show. I had the flu. Remember, I was devastated not to be there." I explained, shocked that she would even question this. "Yeah, maybe," she replied, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. The Christmas after the divorce was particularly painful. I had assumed the girls would split the holiday, perhaps Christmas Eve with one parent and Christmas Day with the other. Instead, Sophia called to inform me that both she and Audrey would be spending the entire holiday with James and Natalie at their ski lodge in Colorado. "It just makes more sense, Mum," she explained coolly. "Dad's place has room for everyone. We'll see you after New Year's." I spent Christmas alone in my apartment, trying to find comfort in the cards from my students and colleagues. I called my sister in Arizona, but her sympathy only made me feel worse. I went to bed early, unable to bear watching holiday movies by myself. Despite these painful rejections, I remained determined to respect my daughter's choices while keeping the door open for reconciliation. I never criticized James, never demanded they take my side, never used guilt as a weapon. I believed that truth would eventually prevail. Meanwhile, I focused on building a new life. I joined a community choir, rediscovering my love for singing. I took weekend art classes, something I'd always wanted to do. I volunteered at a local literacy program helping adult learners master English. I made new friends who knew me not as James's ex-wife or as Sophia and Audrey's mother, but simply as Minnie, a woman with her own interests, strengths, and voice. Carol, my friend from school, became my rock during this period. "You're stronger than you know," she'd remind me when I'd tear up over another missed visit from Audrey. "Keep living your life. They're watching even when you think they aren't." I clung to that hope on the hardest days. I believed that eventually my daughters would see through the manipulation and remember the mother who had read bedtime stories, bandaged scraped knees, celebrated every achievement, and loved them unconditionally. I just didn't know how much more heartbreak lay ahead before that day would come. I learned about Audrey's engagement to Daniel through Facebook. My own daughter hadn't even called to tell me. There she was beaming at the camera, a stunning emerald ring on her finger with the caption, "I said yes to forever with the love of my life." My hands shook as I picked up the phone to call her. To my surprise, she answered. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you," I said, keeping my tone light despite the hurt. "Thanks, Mum," she replied, sounding genuinely pleased. "Daniel's amazing. You'll love him." That comment gave me hope. If she expected me to meet Daniel, surely that meant I'd be included in the wedding. We chatted for a few minutes about how he had proposed during a weekend trip to wine country. She promised to call again soon to discuss wedding plans. A week later, I received a text from Audrey inviting me to lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown. Initial wedding planning, Dad and Veronica will be there too, plus Daniel and his parents. My stomach churned at the thought of seeing James and his new wife, but I wouldn't miss this opportunity to be part of Audrey's special day. I spent hours choosing the perfect outfit. Nothing too flashy, but something that showed I was doing well. The lunch was every bit as uncomfortable as I'd feared. James and Veronica arrived late, making a grand entrance. Veronica, 15 years younger than me, with the kind of polished appearance that comes from unlimited spa treatments, immediately took charge of the conversation. "Audrey, darling, I've already spoken with the event coordinator at the Bellevue Vineyard. They can hold the date for us," she announced, not bothering to check if Audrey had even considered this venue. That's actually perfect," Audrey replied, looking surprised but pleased. "I love Bellevue. I thought you might want something more artistic, maybe that gallery downtown where your work was displayed last year," I suggested gently. James shot me a look. "Bellevue is the premier wedding venue in the state, Minnie. Let's not steer her towards something second-rate." Daniel's parents, Linda and Robert, looked uncomfortable at the obvious tension. Daniel himself put a protective arm around Audrey. I liked him immediately for that gesture. As lunch progressed, it became clear that James had already decided to fund the entire wedding, an extravagant affair with no expense spared. Veronica had apparently appointed herself wedding planner. "Mum, you can help with, the rehearsal dinner," Audrey offered clearly, trying to find a role for me. "Actually, we've already discussed hosting that at our club," James interjected smoothly. "But Minnie could certainly help with addressing invitations." I swallowed my pride. "I'd be happy to help with whatever Audrey wants." The pattern established at that lunch continued through the following months of wedding planning. I was technically included, but effectively sidelined. I wasn't invited to the cake tasting. I didn't get to go dress shopping. When I offered to host a modest bridal shower, I was informed that Veronica had already arranged a lavish event at a country club. The most painful blow came 3 months before the wedding. Audrey asked to meet for coffee, just the two of us. I arrived hopeful that we might finally have some mother-daughter time to talk about the wedding. "Mum, I need to discuss something with you," she began, looking uncomfortable. "Anything, sweetheart?" "I've been thinking about the ceremony." She twisted her napkin nervously. "Dad is going to walk me down the aisle." "Of course," I said, confused. "That's traditional. But for the mother-son dance with Daniel, I think it would be best if Veronica does it." I felt like I'd been slapped. I don't understand. It's just Veronica has been so involved in planning everything. Dad thinks it would look odd if she's not included in this tradition, and she's been like a second mother to me these past few years. And what about your first mother? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The one who raised you for 22 years. Audrey looked down. Mum, please don't make this difficult. I want a drama-free wedding. Everyone's getting along so well. I just want one perfect day without any tension. I took a deep breath, fighting back tears. If that's what you want, Audrey, I'll respect your decision. I promise not to create any drama at your wedding. Thank you, she said, visibly relieved. That means a lot to me. As I drove home, tears streaming down my face, I wondered what else I would be asked to give up. Little did I know that I would ultimately be asked to give up attending the wedding altogether. The morning of Audrey's wedding dawned clear and beautiful. Despite everything, I was determined to put on a brave face and be there for my daughter. I'd spent a month's salary on a tasteful mother-of-the-bride dress in dusty blue. I'd had my hair and makeup professionally done, another expense I could barely afford. I'd wrapped a family heirloom, my grandmother's pearl bracelet, as Audrey's wedding gift. As I drove to Bellevue Vineyard, I practiced what I would say if James or Veronica made any snide comments. Today is about Audrey and Daniel. I would respond with dignity. Let's focus on their happiness. I was prepared for awkwardness, for sidelong glances, for being seated at a distant table far from the wedding party. What I wasn't prepared for was being banned entirely. I arrived at the vineyard 2 hours before the ceremony, as specified on the invitation. A security checkpoint had been set up at the entrance to the long driveway. I rolled down my window, smiling at the young man in uniform. Good afternoon. I'm Minnie Walker, mother of the bride. The guard's expression changed immediately to one of discomfort. He glanced down at a tablet in his hand, then back up at me. Ma'am, I need to ask you to pull over to the side here for a moment. Confused but cooperative, I pulled into the designated area. The guard approached my window again, now joined by an older colleague. Ms. Walker, I'm very sorry, but I've been instructed not to allow you entry to the event. There must be some mistake, I said, my heart beginning to race. I'm the mother of the bride, Audrey Walker. She's marrying Daniel Harmon today. The older guard looked genuinely pained. There's no mistake, ma'am. We have specific instructions. He reluctantly turned his tablet toward me. There on the screen was my driver's license photo, next to bold red text. Do not let her in, not on approved guest list. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be happening. There had to be an explanation. Did Audrey request this? I asked, my voice hollow. I don't have that information, ma'am. We're just following the security protocol established by the event organizer. In that moment, something inside me went very still. The pain was so intense it circled back around to numbness. I had 2 choices. I could create a scene, demand it to see my daughter, insist there had been a terrible mistake, or I could leave with the last shred of dignity I had left. I understand, I said quietly, putting my car in gear. Thank you for your professionalism. I drove away slowly, watching the beautiful vineyard recede in my rearview mirror. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I felt oddly detached, as if I were watching someone else's tragedy unfold. The drive home passed in a blur. I remember noticing how normal everything looked. People shopping, jogging, going about their Saturday activities, completely unaware that my world had just imploded. I walked into my apartment, still wearing my carefully chosen dress, still clutching the gift-wrapped bracelet. It was only when the door closed behind me that the reality hit with full force. I sank to the floor, my legs no longer able to support me, and finally allowed myself to break down. How could this have happened? Had James and Veronica engineered this final humiliation? Had Audrey actually agreed to it? Or worse, had she requested it herself? I turned off my phone, unable to bear any contact with the outside world. I sat in silence as afternoon turned to evening, replaying every interaction with Audrey over the past year, searching for the moment where I had lost her completely. What had I done that was so unforgivable? I had never spoken ill of her father despite his behaviour. I had never demanded she choose sides. I had accepted every diminishment of my role in her wedding with as much grace as I could muster. I had promised not to cause drama. And still, it wasn't enough. I wasn't just being pushed to the background, I was being erased entirely. As the sun set, casting long shadows across my living room, I wondered if this was truly the end of my relationship with my daughter. Had James finally won completely? The thought brought fresh waves of grief, but underneath the pain, a small voice reminded me of what I'd told my elementary students for decades. The truth always finds its way to the surface, just like a cork in water. You can push it down, but it will eventually rise up. I clung to that thought as night fell, not knowing that the truth was already bubbling to the surface at the wedding venue I'd been barred from entering. Hours later, exhausted from crying, I finally turned my phone back on. It immediately began buzzing with notifications. 27 missed calls, dozens of text messages, all from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all, too drained to deal with whatever fresh drama was unfolding. Then a call came in from a number with Daniel's area code. After a moment's hesitation, I answered, "Minnie, it's Daniel, Audrey's, well, I guess still her fiancé, technically." His voice sounded strained. In the background, I could hear what sounded like Audrey crying. "Daniel, what's happened? Is Audrey all right?" "Physically, yes. Emotionally, not so much. Can we come see you? We're about 20 minutes from your place." "Of course," I said, automatically, though anxiety flooded through me. "I'll put on some coffee." While waiting, I changed out of my wedding outfit into comfortable clothes, splashed water on my swollen face, and tried to prepare myself for whatever was coming. When I opened the door, the sight shocked me. Audrey stood there in her wedding dress makeup streaked from tears, looking utterly devastated. Daniel was beside her in his tuxedo, his arm protectively around her waist. "Mum," Audrey choked out before dissolving into fresh tears. I pulled her into my arms without hesitation. Whatever had happened, whatever she had done, she was my daughter, and she was in pain. Once inside with steaming mugs of tea before us, no one wanted coffee at that hour, Daniel explained what had happened. The ceremony was about to start. Audrey was with the bridal party in the preparation suite. She asked where you were, assuming you were already seated. When no one could tell her, she started getting concerned. Audrey wiped her eyes and continued the story herself. "I kept asking everyone, the coordinator, the bridesmaids, even Veronica, but nobody would give me a straight answer. Finally, I told them I wouldn't walk down the aisle until I saw my mother. That's when one of the venue staff mentioned something about security instructions," Daniel added. Audrey demanded to know what that meant. "They showed me the security list," Audrey said, her voice breaking. "Your picture was there, Mum, with instructions not to let you in." I couldn't believe it. I immediately confronted Dad and Veronica. What followed, according to both of them, was a scene that wedding guests would be talking about for years. In front of everyone gathered in the bridal suite, bridesmaids, wedding planner, photographers, Audrey had demanded an explanation. James initially tried to deflect, claiming there must have been a misunderstanding, but Veronica, perhaps thinking she was defending her husband, revealed the truth. "Your mother would have just caused problems," she had apparently said. "She's been difficult throughout the entire planning process. We thought it would be best for everyone if today was drama-free." "Best for everyone, or best for you?" Audrey had shouted. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice my own mother wasn't at my wedding?" James had tried to calm the situation, insisting they could discuss it later, that guests were waiting. "Let's not ruin this beautiful day over a misunderstanding," he'd said. That's when Audrey had truly lost her temper. Misunderstanding. You banned my mother from my wedding and didn't tell me. How could you think that was okay? Sophia had entered the fray at that point, defending their father. Mum would have made everything about her, she'd insisted. Dad was just trying to protect your special day. By lying to me, by going behind my back, Audrey had responded. This isn't protection, it's manipulation. With that, Audrey had made a decision that shocked everyone. She announced she would not be proceeding with the wedding under these circumstances. Despite James's protests, despite Veronica's tears, despite Sophia's accusations of overreaction, Audrey had walked out. Daniel, bless him, had supported her decision completely. A marriage shouldn't start with deception, he told me, squeezing Audrey's hand. We'll get married, but on our terms, with everyone who should be there present. As I listened to their account, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication that the truth had come to light, heartbreak for my daughter's pain, and deep gratitude for her courage in standing up for what was right. I'm so sorry, Mum, Audrey said when they finished telling the story. I should have seen what was happening. Dad and Veronica were slowly pushing you out, and I let it happen. I believed their version of everything. You have nothing to apologize for, I assured her. Your father is very convincing. He convinced me for 23 years that our marriage was solid. We talked into the early hours of the morning. Audrey revealed that James had been systematically working to undermine my relationship with her for years. Subtle comments, rewritten history implications about my stability. Gradually, she had begun to question her own memories of our family life together. It was like a fog, she explained. I knew in my heart that you loved me, that you'd always been there for me. But Dad and Veronica kept suggesting otherwise, and eventually I started to doubt myself. As painful as the day had been, it had ultimately triggered a clarity that might otherwise have taken years to achieve. Sometimes it takes a dramatic event to cut through the fog of manipulation and reveal the truth underneath. Dawn was breaking as Daniel finally suggested they go back to their hotel to get some rest. We agreed to meet again later that day to talk more about what would happen next. At the door, Audrey hugged me tightly. I love you, Mum. I'm so sorry for everything. I love you too, sweetheart. Always have, always will. As I closed the door behind them, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. The road ahead would be difficult. Relationships would need to be redefined, boundaries would need to be established. But the truth had finally risen to the surface, just as I'd always believed it would. Audrey, Daniel, and I met at a quiet cafe the next afternoon. All three of us looked exhausted, but there was a sense of purpose in the air. This was a new beginning. I've been thinking all night, Audrey began, about everything that's happened about the past few years. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. I started writing down memories that felt foggy, things Dad had told me about you that didn't quite ring true. When I really thought about it, so many things didn't make sense. She shared examples that broke my heart. James had told her I'd chosen not to attend her college graduation dinner because I was in one of my moods. When